Hello again, everybody. Well, have you survived Christmas? In fact, have you survived your families at Christmas? Because very often families are the greatest joy of Christmas, but they can also be a very big problem. I'm going to start with a story, and then I'm going to talk a bit about the family of Jesus, and then I'm going to come back to saying something about how we should be thankful for our families. The story is one you might have heard me tell before, and it's a story about a group of small children, four and fives, and the teacher said to them, now, if all the good people in the world are white and all the bad people in the world are green, what colour are you? And the little girl put her hand up and she said, I think I'm a streaky person. Well, of course, that's what we all are, streaky people. Now, if I ask you what you know about the first Christmas, you might give me one or two answers. You might say, well, there's four Gospels, and in one of the Gospels, John, there's that lovely 17 verses of poetry. In the beginning was a word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, and so on. Or you might say, well, in Mark's Gospel, there's no birth story at all. And indeed, in the earliest writings of the Christian church, the letters of Paul, there's no mention of the birth of Jesus. But in two of the Gospels, Matthew and Luke, there are two different birth stories. Luke's one is about Mary and about the shepherds and about the stable, and Matthew's is about the coming of the wise men. And we tend to put them together, don't we? And we don't realise that they are two different stories and they're told for different reasons. Different truths come out of them. But one of the bits of the Bible, the early parts of the Gospels that we never seem to think about, is the beginning of Matthew's Gospel, because it's very interesting. It has about 17 or 18 verses, which is a genealogy of Jesus. Who begat who? For example, Abraham begat Isaac, then Isaac begat, and so on. And it's a very interesting picture of the family of Jesus. And the interesting thing is that the family of Jesus, the predecessors of Jesus, were not a very good crowd. For example, Abraham was a liar. Jacob was a cheater. Judah was a fornicator. King David, who Jesus was of the line of David, David was a murderer and an adulterer. And then also Jesus was descended from Manasseh, who was perhaps the most evil king that the Israelites ever had. And of course, it's not quite as good as that really, because then we look at the women who are part of the predecessors of Jesus, and they too are not a very good lot. For example, there's Tamar, who was a prostitute really and was immoral. There was Bathsheba, who became the wife of David, but who was an adulterer. There was also Ruth, who was in a sense a cheater, and worse than that, Ruth was a foreigner. And then, of course, there was Rahab, who was a harlot and was also a foreigner. So what a background Jesus had. But the wonderful truth, of course, is that God can work through you and through me, and he can create marvellous things through us. And so when we think about our families, they, like all of us, are streaky people. And we are very, very blessed to have them. Our parents gave us life, and our families, our siblings and our children and all their families give us so much happiness. So give thanks for your families. Remember that in the coming year, God is able to use you just as he used the people from the Old Testament, some of whom were perhaps a bit more streaky than they should have been. But perhaps you have got your own difficulties in your own problems, in your own past. Well, certainly you have, of course. But God can still use you, and he can transform you to become the person he wants. And so let's give thanks for our families, and let's go out this year to show God's love to all those we meet. Bye.